I was a massive fan of 24, a massive fan, which I kept embarrassing myself with on set, constantly telling the producers how much of a fan I was of the show. It got to the point where they were going, yes, okay, Graham, we get it.
Welcome to Story and Craft. Now, here's your host, Mark Preston.
All right, we are back, you and I together, another episode of Story and Craft. Always appreciate you coming back by, subscribing, being a part of my mischief here, so it does mean a lot to me. And of course, if you're brand new to the program, maybe you're just a big fan of Graham McTavish, and you're like, fine, I'll check out this Story and Craft show. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking a moment with me. It is very much appreciated. Today, as I mentioned, Graham McTavish, Scottish actor, very talented. He is legitimately in everything. And I do mean that. It's hard to keep track of everything he's in right now. Like, he's been in the Hobbit movies. He is right now in the Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragon on HBO Max, or is it's just Max now. Also, he stars in the Starz show, Outlander, and, of course, The Witcher on Netflix. He has a show with his Outlander co-star, Sam Heughan, though. It is called Men in Kilts, Roadtrip with Sam and Graham. Very interesting show for me right now. It's all things Scotland. Just discovered through, I did the Ancestry thing, found out I'm 1/4 Scottish. Just learned that the other day. Of course, really cool show. Really enjoyed it. New episodes, new season that is, coming out on August 11th on Starz. So that's Men in Kilts. We'll talk about that as well as a lot of other stuff. Do me a favor if you would, a little small favor. Got the phone in hand. Hit that subscribe button. That's one of my kids texting me. I'll leave that in the show. Why not? Let's see which kid it is. Let's make this part of the program today. So that's my daughter Lily right there texting me. I guess I need to go pick her up now. So I'll wrap this up. This is a fun episode. Really enjoyed the chat with Graham. Very talented actor. He has done so much great work. And once again, always appreciate the subscribe button. Press it if you would on your phone. I don't care if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, even YouTube. Just hit subscribe and hit that little bell thing, whatever. That way you get notified every time there's a new episode. And also, if you would, go ahead and like the episode. 5 stars. Hey, every star, every subscription, every like helps the show. So as your phone is in your hand, if you would not mind, go ahead and hit those buttons. And everything Story and Craft, really easy. Storyandcraftpod.com. Once again, storyandcraftpod.com. It is the easiest way to find out everything about the show. Check out past episodes. Send me an email. Always appreciate the emails from you. And, okay, so let's get after it. Today is Graham McTavish Day, right here on Story and Craft. So how are you doing today, sir?
Good. Yeah, very well, thanks. Not bad at all.
Where are you joining us from today?
I'm in London. Yeah.
Now, we are going to touch today on the whole Scottish thing, without a doubt, because I just did the, not 23andMe, it was the Ancestry thing. And okay. I found out I'm one quarter Scottish. I had I thought I'm mostly Ukrainian Jew, but I'm 1/4 Scottish. 1/4 English. I had no idea and did a little research, found out my family actually has a castle from way back when in Scotland. So I'm like, wait a minute, I'm speaking to the man I need to speak to today.
Which clan is that? Do you know?
I think in France it'd be Bouchon, but it's pronounced Beecham, I think.
Yeah.
It's so funny because one part of my family wasn't in the U.S. till 1907. The other part actually financed the Mayflower. Is one of a group of people that actually financed it. So my son and I were going through and find out one of this Beecham fellow was knighted. You can go down a rabbit hole with these ancestry, these genetic things here. So did you ever do that by any chance?
Not the Ancestry thing. I've done. What have I done? A lady offered to do my family tree, and so that's a sort of Scottish-Irish background in my family, and she, my goodness, my God, I mean, the family tree that she produced is like 6 yards long. is so many people.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, it doesn't take long. You don't have to go back that far to suddenly have.
Yeah, I saw something online. If you just go back 8 generations, that's something like, was it 8 or 6? I forgot. It's like some ridiculously large number of people who get into your family tree.
Absolutely.
It was very serendipitous because I'm seeing the show with you and Sam. I was watching a few days ago. I forgot which episode I was watching, but I think it was talking about the Highland Games, and you had to lift the heavy stone onto there was a, feats of strength kind of thing.
The Putrick stone.
And you passive aggressively knock the stone off the thing. I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of what I would do. The young guy, you can lift it, but I can push it off.
Well, all credit to Sam. That is enormously difficult to do that. It's one thing to lift 200 pounds, like in a gym, but to lift a stone.
I got a hernia just watching him do that.
It's very difficult to get a grip. So, yes, that's the problem.
Well, the Men in Kilts thing, how did that come together? How was that show conceived of and then brought to fruition?
Yeah, well, I always had an interest in Scottish history. So I had actually written a treatment for an idea called Clanlands in 1992, or 1991, I think, actually. And the idea was to explore Scottish clans, and that was what I was interested in. And I remember talking about this to Sam, and Sam has an interest in Scottish history as well, of course. And then he rang me. He rang me in New Zealand. I was in New Zealand. I was in the kitchen, and he said, "Hey, mate, why don't we should do something about Scottish history together? It would be fun. Maybe we could do a podcast."
Now, was he from there as well, or was he kind of hitching his wagon to you and talking about the Scottish thing?
No, he had his own interest in it for sure, but he remembered me talking about my interest and thought that it's. And I agree with him that these things are often more enjoyable when you team up with somebody than necessarily doing it all yourself. So, he suggested a podcast, and I didn't even know what a podcast was, so I sort of went, sure, yeah. And then that quickly was sort of put to one side. And then he suggested doing a recorded kind of series using GoPros, which even I knew was preposterous. The idea of me sitting with a GoPro strapped to my forehead with him with one eye would be stupid. So it didn't take us long to come up with the idea of doing it, actually filming it properly. So we got together a group of people that we'd worked with in Scotland, on Outlander, the crew, and we just went out for 5 consecutive weekends, and we went all over Scotland, and we filmed.
And that's it. That's just 5 weekends. That's it.
Well, no, that was what we did to try and persuade Starz.
Oh, because you could do like a pilot together. I gotcha.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, listen, we didn't really know exactly what we were doing. There was no script. We just got hold of a load of people that we thought would be interesting to talk to, and then we drove and we met them. And so everything you see, and that was the format for the series when we actually came to make it. It's completely unscripted, and it's the same with the second season.
But isn't that more fun sometimes to do that? Because you are sort of hanging yourself out there to be open to whatever happens.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, it suits me, especially. I mean, Sam enjoys it as well, but I've always loved that kind of improvisational quality in real-time conversations, because, yes, as you say, you don't know where it's going to lead. And the opportunity as well for humour is there, as long as the person you're talking to knows what they're talking about. They kind of do the heavy lifting for you, and you're able to just sit back and enjoy it, which is what I tried to do. And we got together some really interesting guests for the, as you say, kind of pilot teaser thing that we presented to Starz. And Starz, we were in the room, and they agreed to make the show right there, which we were pretty shocked by, I've got to be honest.
Well, those kind of shows, usually from a budget standpoint, are doing this kind of a show is relatively inexpensive for them to do it, but it can be a lot of fun. And I got to be honest, I've never been I'm not that much of a drinker. I'm not a hard liquor person. I do like a good quality beer, But, after watching, I think it was episode 2, y'all went to the distillery and you laid down in a floor of grain and
amazing.
I became entranced, by the way that the romance of a whiskey,
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And we learnt a lot. I mean, Sam knew a lot more about whiskey than I did, but even he was learning a great deal at the hands of these master distillers that we got to speak to. But, the journey was essentially lubricated with whiskey, so there was no avoiding it.
Well, it was brilliant storytelling, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Talking about just, I think they would burn the bog, I think the fuel
peat.
that create the smoke to roast the grains and
Peat, yeah.
And
Yeah,
how the peat, how it flavors, and whoever shot it, did such a beautiful job. It's like, oh, this is. I was a big fan of Anthony Bourdain. He was a spirit animal, and there was a note of that. There was more of a fun aspect to what the two of y'all did, and I think that was.
It's a genuine. I mean, honestly, it's a genuine enthusiasm as well. Which I think is difficult to fake. We actually do find all these things genuinely interesting.
Now, did you learn more about, or did you learn some things you didn't know? Or were you more expanding on, because, you said this history is really interesting to you. So is it just kind of expanding on your current knowledge, or did you have any aha moments like, oh, I never knew that?
Well, there were certainly plenty of aha moments with the clans, learning about, the entire dispute between the McGregor clan and I think it's the MacLeans, disputing where Rob Roy McGregor is buried. I mean, I've spent my entire life believing that Rob Roy McGregor is buried in Balquhidder in Perthshire. But according to the MacLeans, this is not the case at all. And so we were treated to two clan chiefs arguing literally over the gravestone of Rob Roy about where indeed he was buried. So things like that, look, we were in Castle Cawdor, which is a Campbell castle, and Lady Cawdor, anyone who's read Macbeth knows that she was an interesting character. But this particular Lady Cawdor had a first edition of Shakespeare's Folio, just lying around.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. I was just gobsmacked. Absolutely gobsmacked. So
this is something that's been handwritten, or is it
No, Shakespeare's Folio was published in 1623, and it was compiled by two actors, Hemmings and Condell, who were part of Shakespeare's company, and they essentially transcribed all of his works into a folio, which was then printed. And this is a first edition of that printing of 1623. So
now, was it just sitting in just the library amongst a bunch of other books, or was it kind of featured?
No, we were looking for a prop for the table, and we said, look, the table's a bit bare. And the woman said, oh, well, why don't you just use that book? And we went, oh, great. And I said, oh, and what book is this? And she said, oh, it's Shakespeare's Folio. It's a first edition. And I was pretty speechless.
So how much of the scene did it take just you thumbing through it and looking? Before they started filming, did you take a little time with it?
I certainly did. I certainly did have a look. I mean, good grief. You're holding history, an incredible piece of history, that when it was published, people had no conception of what, I mean, we're talking 400 years ago, no conception of what it would be like now. So, yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Was that kind of the genesis of your acting career? Did you start off with the classics, with Shakespeare, or were you a young man growing up in Scotland, watching movies and wanting to be a movie actor?
Well, I sort of fell into acting by accident, I would say. I wanted to be a writer, so that's what I was interested in. And I used to write comic sketches with my best friend, and we would perform them only because we didn't trust anybody else to do it. So I had no interest in performing, but we knew how we wanted the comic sketches to work, so we did them. And then the drama teacher kept asking me to be in being in the school plays? And I always said no, no interest at all. And then he asked me on this one occasion, there was a guy who had taken ill, and it was 3 days before the performance, and they needed somebody to take over the part. This was when I was 17. And to this day, I've said this many times, but to this day, I have no idea why I agreed to do it. No idea.
When you were younger, were you was being on stage something that either intimidated you, or did you just not hold any interest, or were you nervous about being in front of people?
Just no interest. I used to do public speaking at school, but that was really as part of like a debating society, you know. I had no interest in performing in front of people, really. Although you see, look, but the thing is that all children, and certainly when I was growing up, even all adolescents, perform. They naturally do. They naturally take on characters, and they can slip from reality into fiction very easily, which is a great gift that children have, which is something that we lose as adults. And
it is that sense of play that is sort of the underpinning of the freedom you have as an actor. I think just being okay playing and buying in 100%.
Yeah. You know, I think generally speaking, we become more constricted as we get older in terms of that form of expression. And acting allows you, as an adult, to reconnect with essentially the child that you have always been. And, I'm sort of, a 62-year-old man trapped in the body of the mind of a 12-year-old, really.
Well, that's how you have a career in acting. You know, you're dialed into that. You know, it's funny. I teach voiceover. Sometimes I'll work with young actors in LA who are working actors, young kids. There's this young lady who's I started working with when she was 9 years old, and she was on a Disney Channel show, and it was amazing to just give her a scenario and see her in the sound booth and then say, okay, now play with this. And it just takes off, and I'm going, wow, kids have that superpower where they just go there. Because they're almost suffering from too many choices,
Yeah, well, they don't have that weird inhibition that we start to place upon ourselves as we get older. And as children, you're not even really seeing it as performing as such. Mm-hmm. It's just being. And I could be me, or I can be this other person when I'm a kid. And it's not like I'm having to... now I have to get into some kind of character. It's just like that.
You don't see kids being all method when they try to play cops and robbers. They just buy in and they're there.
No, not a lot of Daniel Day-Lewis going on in the playground, no.
As far as kids go, do you have any kids at all?
I do, yeah. I have a 16 and an 11-year-old, both girls, yes.
Oh, very good. I've got my youngest is 17. Yeah, are they growing up in London?
They're actually in New Zealand, which is where we moved to for The Hobbit. And they've been there with their mother, and then I see them. In fact, they're coming over in a couple of days for a holiday. I go back 3 or 4 times a year to New Zealand, spend time with them. They come over here a couple of times. So, I see them quite a lot. Yeah,
New Zealand. I saw something that was voted one of the most the happy. I was watching something the other day talking about where people are the happiest or the best quality of life, and New Zealand's like a top 5, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting. New Zealand's interesting. It's interesting. I think if I'm completely honest, there is somewhat of a sort of contradiction in New Zealand, in that New Zealand is beautiful. It is utterly beautiful, and it is, it's where Lord of the Rings was filmed, it's where The Hobbit was filmed. It's a sort of fantasy land, almost, otherworldly. But it also is far away from everything. And you feel that when you're there. And I think it's a very, very wonderful place to grow up, to be a child. And I'm very grateful that my children have been growing up there. I think it starts to become a little more tricky when you get into your late teens, early 20s. You feel the need to travel. And so...
would it be... I don't know if the phrase necessarily would be island fever, but there's that sense that you are kind of on this contained space and you kind of want to...
They call it, in New Zealand, they call it the tyranny of distance. So it's you are just conscious that you are 1,200 miles from the nearest landmass, which is
Really,
a
is
long
it that
time.
far from Australia?
Australia, 1,200 miles.
Looking at a map, you think it's kind of closer, but 1,200 miles is a little bit of a haul. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yes, it is.
Are they any of them kind of potentially following in your footsteps? Are they theatrical? Are they little thespians or?
I mean, they've done school plays and things like that. I mean, I've neither encouraged them or discouraged them at all. I think, my youngest daughter, she talks about being a lawyer. She talks about being all sorts of things. She's a natural debater. She could debate you about anything. And my eldest is interested in the film industry, but she's interested in it from behind the camera. So, and I'm all for that. Because acting is a very, it's a very, very, very difficult path, and not to be taken lightly.
Yeah, you definitely need to. What was that phrase? That if you can't imagine yourself doing anything else, then yeah, go for it. But if you can imagine yourself doing a multitude of other things, maybe it's not the thing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
It's so funny you said that the debater thing. My youngest is, she's the one that calls me out on my nonsense, and she's usually right, so, but
Yes.
hopefully she doesn't really listen to this, so she won't know I'm actually giving her that credit.
Yeah.
Now, you were growing up in Scotland. Now, were your parents, were you coming from a family of thespians, or were they of a whole different track?
No, not at all. There was no history at all about. Well, the only person that did any acting in my family was my sister, who did it at school. And so I remember going to see her in a school production of Crime and Punishment, which isn't, what you would imagine would be the obvious choice for a school play, Crime and Punishment. It's, thinking about it now, it's like, wow. But they were a very sort of forward-thinking school. And I went to the same school. But that was the only time. And she was very good, actually. She was very good. But life took her down a different road. But my mother was picked to be in a school play when she was young. But, my mother was born in 1922. And she came from a working class family. There was no possibility of anybody of that generation and that background really at that time getting a career in acting. It would be very, 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 very hard. So it wouldn't have even crossed her mind. But what I will say is that they were incredibly encouraging and supportive.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. They never...
Because I've spoken with many people who, when someone decides, hey, I'm going to do this acting thing, there usually is one parent or somebody is like, sometimes they're trying to protect you by saying, this is difficult. What are you doing? But you had the encouragement. They were all in on your acting game plan.
Look, my mother was somebody that I could have told her that I wanted to do anything, and she would have supported me. My father, his only concern was the money. It was the money. And when he...
Was your father the practical one in the family?
Oh, yeah. He was a pilot in the Second World War. He was a civil aviation pilot, but he'd grown up as an apprentice printer in Glasgow. And so he came from a very strong working class background. And weirdly enough, as I get older, I see many, many more parallels with my father's life in terms of how he was as a person. He wasn't really satisfied with the world that he grew up in and wanted something more and wanted to travel, wanted to experience the world. And that's indeed what he did. So in that sense, not that he wanted to be an actor, but my mother dragged him to every single play that I ever did, every single one. All over the country.
No, was he a commercial airline pilot after the war?
He did after the Second World War. Yeah, he was. He was a bomber pilot in the war, and then he became a commercial airline pilot. And
so I'm a big aviation nerd. I always love hearing stories of going to the flight museums and seeing the old warbirds. And when I learned how to fly, the little flight school was right next door to a aviation museum where most of the planes actually still flew, and they had I don't mean to over romanticize it. It was war after all, but still, that's kind of your father. I'm sure had many stories. For you.
Yeah. I mean, he grew up again, born in 1922. Where he grew up, he was able to see aircraft. In the early 1930s, he was able to see aircraft flying around where he lived, and he dreamt of being a pilot and could never have possibly imagined that he could become one. And it was only the war, like a lot of people, that allowed him to realize that dream, really. But he never spoke about the war. Never once.
Yeah, because he was a young man when he was still a man in his early 20s. And looking at my kids, I'm sure you kind of do the same thing with the younger folk. Oh, yeah. It's like, God, I cannot imagine being 21, 22.
Yeah, he enlisted when he was 19 when he enlisted, and I cannot even imagine it. No,
there was a certain discipline in that generation.
You see. I see pictures of him when he was 19, and he just looks like a man. He's not a teenager. He's a man, and I mean, he left school when he was 14. So he'd had a lot of life experience by the time he was 19. But, I mean, people were different then. They just were.
I think so. That the times pretty much called upon them to be, to meet the moment,
Well, and his father had fought in the First World War. Family members had died in the First World War, both with my mother's family and my father's family. So this was life. This was what life was like. It was a very real part of your existence that, on the whole, we have been spared, comparatively. I mean, people like yourself and me, I don't know if you've ever served in the military, but it's not something that was ever required in my life, fortunately.
No, never did. Admire the people who do greatly. No, where did you go to university to study acting?
I went to London University, Queen Mary College, and I was very lucky. I can look at certain points in my life where I've been lucky in the circumstances I've found myself in, and it's just so happened that where I went to college at London University, the professor of English, I read English literature, the professor of English was very, very, very passionate about making sure that everybody involved themselves in putting on plays. So whether you didn't have to act in them, but act in them, work backstage, make costumes, but especially Shakespeare, especially Jacobean and Elizabethan drama, you had to put them on stage because that's what they were written for. And so I was lucky enough to be able to play many roles that I actually wouldn't have been able to play if I'd come to drama school, ironically enough. And so I got a lot of experience at university.
Well, that's good. That's a very interesting point, where if this was actually your chosen thing initially, that would be, you would be competing against others to maybe get certain things. Yeah. But here you can, you're kind of put in, like you mentioned, you wanted to be a writer, so you're kind of in the ecosystem seeing all angles of the creative process.
Yeah. I mean, I developed an interest in acting as I was leaving school. And when I left school, I took a year off. And during that year, the local amateur dramatics company, they came round and leafleted all the houses in the area in the days when people used to kind of like hand print leaflets. And they stuck one through my letterbox, or our letterbox, and it was asking for young actors to join the local church hall company. And I showed it to my mother. And I said, do you think I should do this? And I've never forgotten her answer. She just looked at me and she said, yeah, I think you should. And that was that. And I thought, oh, okay. And like lots of decisions in your life, they seem of no consequence at the time. They really do.
Isn't that funny? It's usually not something it's a big decision.
Yeah.
And also the ones that where you genuinely follow your intuition. Like Sanford Meisner said, act before you think. Your instincts are more honest than your thoughts. And those rare moments when you're like, this feels right. And then you're so proud of yourself it works out.
Yeah.
But not always, but
no, indeed not. No. But I mean, that's what primed me for being so interested in it. I did a year of amateur theatre, basically, before I went to university. And then I just did theatre all the time when I was there. So
when you left university, what happened from that point forward? Were you a quote unquote working actor, or were you still trying to find yourself?
Well, it was funny. When I left, the idea was that I was going to go to drama school for a year afterwards, postgraduate. That was the plan. And so I auditioned for a number of drama schools, Bristol Old Vic and RADA and Central and all the usual ones. And I got into 5 schools. And then I was suddenly confronted with this terrible truth that I was going to have to pay. Because in those days, you had free university education in the United Kingdom. And so I just had 3 years of free education. And the idea of paying was just completely anathema to me. So I just
would this be considered sort of a master's program, if you will?
Yeah,
would that be?
I mean, I'd used up my 3 years. So there was no way I was going to pay. So I just said, no, I won't do that. I'll just do a one-man show. So I did Samuel Beckett's Crap's Last Tape. And my girlfriend and I took it around to pubs all over London to get my equity card. And that's what I did. I got my equity card. And then
you could get your equity card by doing performances at pubs. Really?
Yeah. Because it was a one-man show, it was a loophole in equity that it counted as a variety act. And as a variety act, you could pretty much perform it anywhere. And so I did it, and I just had to be paid, and I had to prove that I'd been paid, and then I was a professional actor. And like a lot of things, certainly in my case, it has been a great advantage to not know what I'm doing, just to be completely ignorant and just.
Isn't that funny when you reach this age and you look back, going, if I had cognition of how many things could go wrong or different scenarios, I never would have done it.
I would never have moved to America. I would never have gone into acting. So I was just contacting theatres. I was just ringing them up in the days where there weren't casting directors then in theatre. So you just ring up and you talk to the director, and you just say, "Oh, hello, I'm Graham. I'm an actor. Are you casting anything at the moment that I could be right for?" And they'd say, "Oh yeah, well, send in your stuff. What do you think you could be good for?" And you'd send them in, and some of them would ring you up and go, "Yes, we'd like you to come in," and some of them you'd never hear from again. But I had no inhibitions at all. I was just like, like ridiculously confident with no basis for that confidence. So,
well, that's being in your 20s, isn't it? You know, that's the name of the game. I saw a quote the other day. It said, if you are at this age and you're looking back on your younger self and you don't go, God, I was such a knucklehead, you're still a knucklehead, you know, but that's part of the process. You got to go through it to learn, to discover yourself, I think.
Yes. And, you know, I ended up, doing some acting roles but I wanted more exposure. So myself and a friend, we'd done Edward Albee's The Zoo Story together at the Edinburgh Festival. And we were looking for another 2-man show. So we wrote a play about Vincent van Gogh based on the letters between the two of them. And we persuaded the National Gallery in London to put it on. And then that led, it's a very long story we haven't got time for, but that led to a tour of America, 3 tours of America and abroad and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. But again, you know, if I started that process with the goal of touring America, I would have been paralyzed. But all I wanted to do was get people to be able to see me act. So, we rather than rely on somebody else to give me the job, I wrote the job for myself. And please come and see me. So it's a kind of arrogance mixed with naivety, really.
You know, you talked about that thing when you're younger. If you don't know what you're stepping into, that's a good thing because you can more effectively follow your goals, dreams, aspirations without any hindrances of common sense.
Yes.
That kind of a
it
thing.
Helps not having common sense, for sure.
Now, where did you land when you got to America? Where did you post up first to kind of start?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah. Well, we organized a tour. So we had managed to get all of these art institutions in America, because we'd done it at the National Gallery in London, to book us. So we did the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. We did the Art Institute of Chicago, LA County Museum, Chicago, we at Cleveland, we did everywhere. But the first place was Birmingham, Alabama. And it was fantastic. I mean, that was 1987. And it was, I was 26. We arrived, we'd made all the props. My friend had painted reproductions of Van Gogh's work because he was a great artist. My friend is a great artist. And we started there. And we were going to New York next. And I remember when we told the people in Alabama that we were going to New York, they said, "Oh, you want to be careful. You want to be careful. There are Yankees up there."
Birmingham has a little more of an artsy scene, a little more of a restaurant. Artsy people, from what I understand, gravitate to that town.
Yeah, it was a fun experience.
Now, so you ended up in New York. I'm assuming based on the work you were doing, did you also head to L.A. and live there live in L.A. for a time?
No, we didn't really live in America. We toured America, so that was what we did. So we would go out there because Britain was so miserable in January, February, and March. We would just construct tours to take us out of the country every January, February, and March. So we went to America. We went there 3 times. We went to Australia in January, February, and March. So we were always somewhere warm. That was the goal. It was
that's the one thing that would keep me from wanting. It always seems gray and cold and rainy, but it's such beautiful, both Scotland and Ireland. And it just, you look at that part of the world, it's just green and rolling hills, and it's just absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
And of course, seeing y'all doing your road trip in that van, which is, you and Sam, of course, kind of open. I want to watch some of the rest of it because I want to dial into a little bit more of my Scottish lineage, to understand a little bit more.
You'll understand, yes, the feuding nature of the Scots. A day's never complete unless they're feuding with somebody else. It's a remarkable talent that they have, which they exported to America, of course, with the Hatfields and McCoys and people like that. They're Scottish. They just went there and replicated what they'd been doing in Scotland for hundreds of years.
They're a very tenacious clan. Or clans, rather.
Yes.
But one of the things I'm curious about, and I totally forgot you did this, but back in the early 2000s, love watching 24. And your swing on 24, you're a bad Russian dude.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like? And you're the third or fourth gentleman I've spoken with who was on 24. What was that experience like? That seemed like a fast-paced kind of experience.
Yeah. I mean, I was a massive fan of 24. A massive fan, which I kept embarrassing myself with on set, constantly telling the producers how much of a fan I was of the show. It got to the point where they were going, yes, okay, Graham, we get it. We just need you to become Mikhail Novakovich now and be the Russian ambassador. Don't talk about your fandom. But it was great. I mean, I think people forget how revolutionary 24 was.
I think that's before streaming, of course. Before as many options. In 24, that was appointment TV right there.
Yeah. I mean,
what shows are out there now? I mean, of course, like Game of Thrones and things like that, which I have to admit, I was speaking with somebody the other day. I said, there's so much stuff out there now.
Yeah.
There are things I miss. I'm planning on, I'm waiting because I got 2 children in college now. One's about to do their gap year. So finally the TV gets to be 100% mine to watch,
There's so much. So, in the time that you're waiting to watch, 8 seasons of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, you'll be having other shows that you'll want to watch. Yeah. I've never seen The Wire. Everyone's always going.
Neither have I. And again, I go back to Anthony Bourdain mentioned that. I think he said that was one of his favorite shows ever. The same production team did. I was down in New Orleans. They were shooting Treme.
I've never seen that either.
And in fact, I saw you I auditioned for Preacher a few times. I saw you were in that, and I didn't get more than. I'm trying to remember, what did you do in Preacher? I'm trying to remember.
I was the Saint of Killers.
I've only gotten in like 2 or 3 episodes into that show, so I need to get a little further in.
Yeah. The Saint of Killers It was literally a dream for me to do that role because I loved the graphic novels and I loved him. So he's, yeah, I mean, look, playing a character called the Saint of Killers, yeah, it's going to be fun. So we're the ball.
Well, I do have to ask, being a part of the Hobbit and the Peter Jackson ecosystem, what was that like? What was it comparatively to the other stuff you've done? How is that experience any different or unique and fun?
Oh, well, certainly up to that point, I'd never experienced anything like it. I don't think any of us had. Just the sheer scale of it. It's a juggernaut. It's enormous. So, we shot, I can't even remember how many hundreds of days that we shot on it over 2.5 years. But you became a sort of family, especially the dwarves, because you were uniquely clad in all of this stuff, the prosthetics and the costumes, which, my costume weighed nearly 70 pounds. So it was like running around with a person on your back. So it was a very intense experience, but truly wonderful. I remember, any time that you would feel tired or fatigued, or you just wanted to go home, I would remind myself how lucky I was to be there, and it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, I need to get to New Zealand, and it's one of the places. It's such a unique history too.
It's a beautiful place. It's an incredible country. Yeah. You should go.
But of course you are my Sherpa of all things Scotland. So I'm going to be, because I'm going to be watching the show like afterwards, going, I learned a new thing. So the Men in Kilts, are y'all coming out with a new season of that soon, or
yes.
is that?
Yes. August the 11th is when it starts on Starz. We begin there, and the book that deals with the experience of shooting that show in New Zealand, Clanlands in New Zealand, is published on November the 7th. So
the book is very good. That's because I so want to learn a little bit more, because like I said, I went down that rabbit hole and realized, my family, many, I think 16 great grandfathers back, was the one who maybe a little bit more financed the Mayflower. That's kind of I mean, it probably goes further back than that. I lost track, but it was such an interesting to be able to draw a line between then and now and go, wow, that's...
I know. No, it's we've written three books. This is the third book. So we wrote one on the first season as well, and then we did an almanac. But the first one covers Scotland and our experience in Scotland, and this one covers our experience in New Zealand and their history and their connection with Scotland.
Now, are you working on anything else right now, or is that do you have any new shows that are going to be rolling out?
Well, I've just been to the premiere of a nice independent movie that I did in Montana last year that is due for release next year, I believe. Yes, that's when it's going to be coming.
Well, that's another part of it. That's actually a part of the U.S. that, depending where you are, might remind you a little bit more of Scotland, just topographically,
Yes, and a big Scottish connection there, actually, I found, with the McDonald's, interestingly enough. But it's called Somewhere in Montana, so that's coming out. And we start shooting on season 4 of The Witcher later in the year. So that's coming out. And I worked on Love, Death and Robots for Netflix, which will be coming out, I guess, later this year, maybe early next year. I'm not sure. And I'm doing an independent.
It seems like you're working nonstop, though. It sounds like you're very you
know,
well. It can be rigorous, though. When you're going from one project to the next.
The travel is the hard thing for me now. It's brutal. Having kids in New Zealand doesn't help.
But before we get going, I like to ask what I call my 7 questions, and it's a question I've been dying to ask the whole time. The first one is what your favorite comfort food is, and that really dovetails into something I'm curious about. It could be the same thing, or be something different. Growing up, if somebody say, "Oh yeah, you had that all the time in Scotland," I'm from Texas, and elsewhere they don't think of having chicken fried steak in the morning with eggs, But that's a normal thing in Texas, depending where you are.
Comfort food, yeah. Cheese.
Oh, cheese.
Cheese. I love cheese.
partial to any particular cheese?
I'm pretty Catholic in my tastes of cheese. I'll eat pretty much any cheese. I used to sit in front of the TV when I was a kid with just a block of cheese and just eat my way through it. So yes, it's a very strong connection to my childhood.
Yeah, I think I did an okay job with my kids. We'll go to Whole Foods and we'll go through the cheese section, and they'll be totally okay getting the funkiest, stinkiest, runniest cheese. They understand that the smellier it is, the more interesting the taste will be. And sometimes it shocks me the stuff they'll eat. But as I've gotten older, though, I'm like keeping an eye on the cholesterol. So I'm like, I don't know. It's like, some things you got to let go and do it.
Exactly.
Now, real quick, like if you were to say Scotland, though, what would, outside of haggis, everybody knows haggis, but what is something that is pretty ubiquitous? Everybody had it either as a dinner item, something for breakfast.
Kippers.
Ah, okay. Smoked kippers, right?
Smoked kippers, yes. My father used to stink the kitchen out regularly with smoked kippers.
Well, that's, if I'm not mistaken, that they are kind of the same way in Holland. I think they love their kippers there as well.
All right. I didn't know.
Now, if you were to sit down and next question, have a cup of coffee, you and three people, that now living or not, who would be kind of nice to spend a few hours with? Three people you can think of to have conversation for a bit.
Oh boy. That's a big ask. Well, Shakespeare, definitely. That would be an interesting person to have over for dinner. I think somebody like, well, from a Scottish point of view, someone like William Wallace. He'd be interesting to spend an evening with. And possibly, let me think, somebody like, well, yeah, I mean, I grew up loving Clint Eastwood, you see. And so it would be an interesting evening, Clint Eastwood, William Wallace, and William Shakespeare. Yeah, it wouldn't be boring.
I've heard that being directed by Clint Eastwood's very interesting. He's just a little different.
Yeah, I hear that too. Yeah.
Like instead of yelling action, he's like, okay, go.
That's right.
It's amazing that guy's in his 90s, what he's still doing.
I know. Fantastic. Inspiring.
Now, if you were to go back in time when you were a young man, and the first time you noticed somebody on TV or film, who was your first celebrity crush? You just see them and go like, oh, they grabbed your attention out of the gate.
Roger Moore and Tony Curtis in The Persuaders.
It's really interesting you bring up the Roger Moore thing, thinking 007. I have to ask, though, who is your favorite James Bond?
Sean Connery, no question.
Of course, I would say Sean Connery first, and I do have to say I grew up with Roger Moore as being my 007 and my...
Yeah, he was very, very different.
But Daniel Craig, they paid homage, like with I can't remember the movie was named after the estate that he grew up on as a young child. Skyfall. So James Bond was Scottish, which I didn't really put two and two together till later. So,
well, yeah, that's what Sam Mendes decided. But yes, I think when you read the books, yeah, it's interesting. Connery brought real danger to the character, which is very important if you're a fan of the books. So.
I took a cruise with my children down to the Caribbean. We went to Jamaica, and I really wanted to go to where the books are written, because it's like a resort-ish. GoldenEye, yeah. And we just didn't have time to, but I wanted to go. Yeah. But now, speaking of an island, the next question: if you were to be forced to live on an exotic island, somewhere you want to be, it's nice, but it doesn't have streaming, internet. So you're going to need to bring to listen to music one CD rather. And also a movie you can watch over and over again. What would be the DVD you would want to bring? So a movie and an album.
The DVD, like a TV show, you mean?
That's true. It could be a TV show. It could be a movie. Something you can watch over and over.
It's a mad, 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 mad world. I love that film.
Now, musically, what would be the album you'd want to have with you?
Oh gosh, well, probably it would have to be an album that I grew up with. So it would either be The Clash, or it would be maybe Pink Floyd, something like that.
I would like to see a resurgence of love and affection for what we call it retro music now, but there was such a definitive era. Think about The Clash.
Yeah,
that was. Now, if you were to go next question, from the time you wake up in the morning till the time you go to bed, What would be the component parts? How would you define a perfect day for you? You know, what would be the pieces of that perfect day?
Gosh, good cup of coffee, followed by a good walk, followed by lunch with my kids, followed by, I don't know, a cycle ride. That would be a great thing to have. And going to see a movie at the cinema with my closest friends. That would be a great day.
That is really, really nice. And I like that it starts off with a cup of coffee. I can identify with that. But it's not tea, is it? So why is it not tea? Why is it coffee? I have to ask a gentleman from your neck of the woods.
I've transitioned into coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, when that trip down to Jamaica, we got a big bag of this Blue Mountain coffee. I'm telling you, that is it's expensive as heck to get if you're not there, but that's like my favorite coffee now. Yeah. Now, last couple of questions. If you were doing this, if you did not end up being a thespian, having the career you had, what would be the other path you would be on?
I would have been a pilot. Career? I would have been an airline pilot. That's what I was getting ready to do. I was going to join the RAF, and I was going to follow in my father's footsteps. Yeah.
Now, did you ever do your private pilot's license? Or?
Sadly not. No. A great regret.
But last question I've got for you. If you were to have that DeLorean and go back in time, and you had just a few minutes with 16-year-old you, piece of advice that you'd want to impart to either make that moment of your life better or maybe put you on a little bit different of a path, what advice would you have for 16-year-old Graham?
I wouldn't want to put myself on a different path, to be honest. I would just tell him to trust your instincts, really. And not worry so much.
That's one of the most common responses is don't worry, trust the process, go through it, don't stress yourself. Because like you were saying, all those decisions you make, you don't know the sequence of events that get you from there to here.
Yeah.
Well, Graham, thank you. I do want to thank you for taking time out. It really is special. And again, I appreciate your education on the all things Scotland. I'm going to continue my education, I promise.
My pleasure.
All right, there you go. Mr. Graham McTavish. Enjoy this chat quite a bit. Don't forget, he is literally on TV everywhere. He is in House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel. It's on HBO Max, or just Max. I'm going to say HBO Max forever, I think. Also, he is in Outlander, the Starz show, and his Starz co-star, Sam Heughan, got together with him to make the show Men in Kilts, Roadtrip with Sam and Graham. That comes out, the new season, that is, on August 11th. And, of course, you can check out Graham on the show The Witcher on Netflix. And that's it for me today. And again, if you don't mind, a little quick moment to grab your phone, hit that subscribe button, like the episode, and give us some stars there, huh? Love those 5 stars, working hard for them. And I want to thank you. It does mean a lot to me coming back every week to check out the show. And if you're brand new to the show, hey, come on back by for another episode shortly. You go have a great rest of your day. If you are working out, if you're driving, whatever you're up to right now, just be safe. I really do appreciate it. And we'll get together next time. How about that? Right here on Story and Craft.
That's it for this episode of Story and Craft. Join Mark next week for more conversation right here on Story and Craft. Story and Craft is a presentation of Mark Preston Productions, LLC. Executive producer is Mark Preston. Associate producer is Zachary Holden. Please rate and review Story and Craft on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe to show updates and stay in the know. Just head to storyandcraftpod.com and sign up for the newsletter. I'm Emma Dillon. See you next time, and remember, keep telling your story. Come on.